Good night, Belizeans at home and abroad. This is the Belizean Affairs Show number 356. 356. My name is Leonard Brackett. Tonight being Friday, I will be your host and we'll be dealing with some constitutional matters as well as some case law and other related issues. Um, as I launch the program tonight, I'm going to follow the same pattern as we always do, which is first of all to offer a short word of prayer and then followed up with a short scripture reading. I'll bow my head for the prayer. Divine loving Father, thou who art the creator of heaven and earth and all that in them are, into thy hands we commend ourselves once more, asking that thou would accept our humble expression of gratitude and thankfulness to thee for having granted us the privilege of life, and secondly, the opportunity to still be alive among our family members, friends, and loved ones. We pray that thou must bless our children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, those of us who have, that thou must bless our significant others, that thou must bless also our country of Belize, its people and leadership, and the rest of our family members, wherever they are. We pray that thou must bless this country of the United States, its people and leadership as well, and that thou would continue to bless the rest of humanity according to thy observations and thy bountiful mercies unto us all. We thank thee for having given us a cessation of hostilities in the Middle East somehow, and that thou would help us to transcend some of those difficult times, despite all the mayhem, all the deaths. We know, loving Father, that thou art able to take good and make it better, and that thou art able to help us to heal what ails us. We pray that thou mayest bless the rest of humanity in a special way. Again, I ask, especially those people who are in tornadoes, hurricanes, flooding, earthquake, volcano eruptions, and all manner of pestilence and evil created on the face of this earth. Be with us all now and always, for us his mercies in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you very much. That was the prayer for the evening. And we will take a short reading. Let me see where I'm going to pick my reading from tonight. I'm going to pick the reading for tonight from Job chapter 5. And I'll start at verse 1. And it reads as follows: Call now, if there be any that will answer thee, and to which of the saints will thou turn? For wrath killeth the foolish man, and envy staveth the silly one. I have seen the foolish taking root, but the stubbornly I cursed his habitation. His children are far from safety, and they are crushed in the gate. Neither is there any to deliver them. This is a Bible written in the Old English format of writing and reading, and therefore some of the thoughts that are expressed there, when you try to interpret those thoughts in modern linguist terms, as a matter of fact, the English language wasn't around when the Bible was written. So we're reading in English something that was written in a completely different language. And as the English language developed, they try to take these modern day words and adjust them to convey the thoughts that was written in the old scriptures. It's not a Bible studies or biblical endeavor tonight, so I won't indulge in much of that. I just said that as I was passing by in terms of what was read, and I'd like to get into the meat and the bone of the subject for tonight, and that is going to be the Constitution of Belize. Those who have been following this particular platform and programs over the last few years, we started out doing one program a week, then we went to 3 programs a week, and now we're still doing 3 programs a week. We have gotten to the number of 356, and we'd like to thank those who have been with us on this particular ride. And we'd like to remind you that you maybe have heard us from the very inception of this particular program, haranguing and browbeating the government as to their scofflaw conduct, not adhering to the constitutional prescription, what make an adequate government act lawful, legally, and constitutionally. And because they have been failing in such a dastardly way, we took it upon ourselves to challenge them. There are many reasons why we should not have had to indulge in that particular task, because many of the people that have been elected were also liars, as well as those who were in cabinet were also liars. So it's not like we were trying to teach them something that they shouldn't have known. All we were doing was to try and educate the public on the shortcomings of the government, especially when they undertook that task to try and undo our current constitution and replace it with something more pliable that does not serve the well-being and best interests of the country, but that serves their nefarious purpose of hustling money out of the treasury by devious means, and pretending that because they have the powers and the authority vested in them, that they were supposed to just go ahead and run our government affairs according to how they want rather than how we needed it to be run. Basically, we employed them, we gave them a job, they came in and took over the whole show and just forgot about us. Anyhow, it got to a point where they decided they wanted to change the constitution, and they went about bamboozling the people into this grand undertaking of getting the people to acquiesce to them or agree with them to change the constitution in ways that they wanted, without necessarily explaining what they were after to the public. And they bamboozled the public by telling the public that, well, the constitution came from an old British constitutional base, which was over 1,000 years old. And they're the new leaders now. We're thinking that maybe we should abandon that steadfast constitutional practice that many other countries throughout the rest of the world have held on to and are still holding on to. Because many people do not realize that the Constitution of the United States itself came out of the British constitutional and legal practices, as well as Canada and many others. But I'm not here to do a history tonight. I'm here to try and deal with the constitutional matters of Belize. And therefore, I will not prolong my preface on historical facts, but I'll continue stating the reason why we have this particular task in front of us, and we have been doing the best we can under the circumstance. That is to say, the government, if it really wanted in good faith to make legitimate and viable constitutional changes, reasonable an honorable constitutional change rather than trying to make changes that were arbitrary, capricious, and in many ways very onerous. They were taking away the rights of the people and trying to tell the people that we needed a better constitution in order for us to get our rights vindicated. That itself is a shell game and a bamboozling process. Nevertheless, we ended up with what is called a PCC, People's Constitutional Commission, which previously had a name by the Constitutional Reform Commission. But they changed the name because they wanted to recruit the people into this endeavor when we start beating them over the head with the Constitution. They got the grand idea that, well, if the people support what they're trying to do, since they are the politicians and they're the one who run for office, and if the people give them the support as the leader of the country or to be elected as leaders of the country, then they should just take free reign and do what the devils they wanted, even without the people's consent. By mere fact that the people elected them, then they presume that they had the right and the privilege and authority to ignore the Constitution and not to follow the constitutional prescripts that required of them to pursue policies of state that aggregate to the well-being and safety of the country and people. And when we start beating them over the head about what they were attempting to do and how they were going about doing it, they learned their lessons. They picked up a few little tips here and there. Not as if they needed to hear it from us anyhow, because like I said, a lot of these people are senior members of great law firms. They're not wet behind their ears. In other words, they didn't just born yesterday or jump out yesterday out of a hole and decide that they won't just run crazy over the Constitution and the people. It's something that they've been, cognizant of. But as we kept pointing out some of their shortcomings and their failures and omissions and oversights and deliberate malfeasance, I would say, they got embarrassed, and so they decided to make some little changes. Like I said, they changed the reform, they changed the Constitutional Reform Commission and gave it the new name, and they went to the House and voted that new name and bill to enforce it under the new title of PCC, People's Constitution Commission. And the task for that commission was actually to go out and teach the people something about the Constitution in regards to knowing that most Belizeans were not familiar with what the Constitution says. So this entity was supposed to be tasked first and foremost to go out and educate the people about the Constitution. They spent millions of dollars and failed to educate the people about the Constitution, because by the time they were finished with their endeavor and turned over their report, they had not addressed 1/4 of the constitutional lessons that they should have taught. They went here and there, have a little meeting with a few people here, go and have another few meeting with another few people there, and in total they didn't make maybe 1/10 of the population of the country. In fact, I would venture to say they met less than 1/20th, while they were claiming that they were meeting a whole lot more people than that. But that's not even the egregious part. The egregious part is that they know they did not fulfill their obligation to teach. They asked for extra time. They were given extra time. And the time was spent diddle-daddling instead of doing the task of teaching, so people could learn and know. And then they would have been able to go ahead and quiz the people as to what is it, based on what they now know, what is it that they agree with, and what is it they would like to take out of the Constitution, or what they want to amend. But they had this grand idea that there was so much things that they wanted to take out of the Constitution, they were going to go ahead and do it, and then just ask the people if they want the Constitution changed, and they will put in everything and anything that they wanted. When in fact, whatever major changes they go to make in the Constitution, especially as regards to the separation of powers and as regards to the fundamental rights, you know, the structure of the Constitution. There are certain parts of the Constitution that they can't tamper with. And they decided that they was going to tamper with those anyhow, regardless of what the Constitution says and what they are supposed to do. They don't allow themselves to be guided by the principles that the Constitution stipulates, or the guiding rules and regulations and laws that we're supposed to be governed by. So when we saw what they were doing, we decided this program was going to take up the task at least one day a week, if not others as well, to teach the Constitution of the country. And we assigned Friday, under my chairmanship, that particular task. So tonight, I want to deal with part of the recommendations that was made by the PCC to the Prime Minister. And I want to go to recommendation number, just a second, let me turn this around here quickly so I can, okay, let's see. Okay, just give me a second here. I'm trying to line this stuff up so when I start. Okay, I want to go to recommendation number 61. They submitted 100 and something recommendation, and we have dealt with quite a few of them before. We dealt with this one as well before, but we did not deal with it in its fullness, and therefore I decided that I need to come back to it for clarity's sake and deal with it more substantively and more detailed. So this particular recommendation, number 61, it says, amend to abolish the office of the Governor General, which falls in the Belize Constitution under Part 4 of the Constitution, where it says the Governor General as the heading. And I'll get around to reading parts of those in a little while. But I just want to first preface with the recommendation, and they'll read, after reading the recommendation that they made, read the Constitution as it is to see what is it that you're trying to bamboozle the people with, right? So let's go. Amendment number 61 says, the PCC recommends that the office of the Governor General be abolished by replacing the whole of Part 4 of the Constitution. In other words, a big chunk of the Constitution, most of which referred to the Governor General and the powers that the Governor General have, which is to assent to any laws or rulings that the government of the day would like to bring into existence. It requires the ascension of the Governor General after it's passed in the legislature for it to become law. They don't want to have to do that anymore. They want to commit sedition. They want to get rid of the Governor General, and they want to get rid of the Governor General's boss, on whose behalf the Governor General operates, that is to say, the head of state. They want to capture that power unto themselves. They don't want it to be assented to them. So for all intents and purposes, they're telling us we need to stop being under the British flag that protects us against Guatemala, and instead be under their flag that's playing hanky-panky with Guatemala, so that we can become a vassal state of Guatemala or Guatemala's 23rd district. We don't need the British to protect us anymore. We don't need any protection because we are now a colony of Guatemala instead of a colony of Britain. Nobody in Belize decided that they wanted to stop being a colony of one country to become a colony of another country, especially a country that claims our country in its totality. The British gave us independence, or at least a conditional independence. The Guatemalans are trying to usurp or take away that independence. And we have our leaders bamboozling us into making the Guatemalans have their way with us. Because they turn around after us and say, well, the Guatemalans are bigger than us. We can't fight them, so we might as well just, let them do what they want with us. They put us in this situation, now they are crying foul. But those are what you call jackals, hyenas, bamboozlers, and for all intents and purposes, they're traitors. So they don't want any protection from the British. They'd rather align us with Guatemala. That's clear enough for them. Recommendation number 62 says, repeal and replace Part 4 with the establishment of the Office of the Constitution. So instead we have a Governor General, we will have an Office of the Constitution, because they will share the powers of the Governor General and authority of the Governor General. How they going to get it or get the opportunity to dictate or control those powers, I don't know, because the Governor General has no authority to grant them that. They have to find a way to deal with the head of state. They have to find a way to overthrow the head of state. They have to find a way to commit sedition without losing their own heads. But these guys are not brave enough to step to the head of the process and do what needs to be done as people who have proper fortitude. They want to hide behind the skirts of the populace and claim that the populace desire these outcomes, to become modern slaves of these modern taskmasters. Bunch of jackals, like I said. Anyhow, I'll read part of what they're stipulating here in this recommendation 61. I'll read subsection 1 of that 61 recommendation. It says here, there shall be an office of the Constitution which shall be comprised of 5 members, all of whom shall be natural-born Belizeans and be of 35 years older, or 35 years or older at the time of appointment. 1 nominated by the Prime Minister himself, 1 by the ministry, 1 by the majority of the House of Representatives, which for all intents and purposes is one and the same as the Prime Minister, because it's the person that commands the majority in the House of Representatives that is picked as Prime Minister in our system of governance. So at that point, 2 out of those 5 are directly under the control of the Prime Minister. And I'm going to tell you ahead of time, all 5 will be under the control of the Prime Minister by the time we finish read this paragraph here. Let's continue. 1 by just a minute. 1 by the House of Representatives, I read that already. 1 by the majority of the Senate, which is also appointed by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister appoints 6 of the senators. The opposition appoints 3, and 4 other senators are appointed by the NGO and others. 1 appointed by the magistrates and judges, and 1 by the majority of the elected local government representatives, who form the city council, the town boards, the town councils, the village council, and the alcaldes, most of whom have been under the leadership of the PUP party or whichever party is running the government. In most instances, they are the one that wins the town boards, the village councils, and all those other lower level people. They come from the very same party that the prime minister would control. So, for all intents and purposes, these people that would be the members of the Constitution Commission would be appointed by the prime minister, and their job would be to oversee the judiciary system. So, I hope most Belizeans would understand what that entails or implies. If the prime minister appoints the people of his choice from a political vantage point to be in this particular commission, and this commission is going to lord over the judiciary, decide whether or not whatever the judiciary does is constitutional or not, because this is the Constitution Commission, it means they're taking away powers from the Supreme Court, as is presently constituted in our current Constitution. And they are making this modification to change the Constitution so that the Prime Minister, for all intents and purposes, after taking on all these responsibilities, he will become a superpower Prime Minister, because he'll also be the head of state. While you have some other members of the Commonwealth who have presidents, they also have a separate person as prime minister. The head of state is the person that has normally, in those kind of systems, the highest power, aggregated power, and accountability for the nation. In some other states, the prime minister is the person, they have a super prime minister that controls the state powers. Those powers are vested under the portfolio of the prime minister. So let's see what it says on subsection 2 of this section 61. It reads as follows: functions of the office. The office of the Constitution shall have the following functions, as in paragraph A, which reads as follows: the education of the citizens or citizenry on the Constitution and the process of governance. This includes ensuring that the curriculum of primary and secondary and tertiary schools carry the materials and instructions, as well as there is a Constitution Commission with the public on topics of constitution, on topics concerning the Constitution. That's what it read. I'm sorry, I babbled a little bit there. It also deals with paragraph B, which says the Constitution defines the Constitution drafting jurisdiction by 1, adjudicating issues arising in the Constitution making process, as well as 2, initiating or requiring legislation that give life to the Constitution, and 3, review the constitutionality of the laws in advance of legislation or ante factum, that is to say, just the same as before the laws are put into or sent up for legislative purposes. Number 4, reviewing the constitutionality of constitutional amendments. That is to say, right now, under our current system, those powers are vested in the Supreme Court or the High Court. That power will be stripped from the purview of the Supreme Court, which has unlimited jurisdiction to deal with any constitutional matters and to do exactly what it says here, that this particular group is not going to assume. So what they're doing is neutering or taking away the powers of the judiciary. They are violating the fundamental constraints of the Constitution, which says that we shall have three branches of government that are equal. They are making it unequal because they are aggregating the powers of the judiciary and subordinating it to the executive for all intents and purposes. That's overthrowing the system. We will not have then a system of law the way we currently know it to be. The three branches of government that is spoken about is the legislative body, which includes the Senate and the House of Representatives, the executive body, which includes cabinet, the prime minister, and those who are accountable to the various ministries under those various ministers, as well as the judiciary. And each of them, according to the Constitution, are empowered with their own constitutional authority and powers of function. Our system of governance doesn't say that we have a super prime minister that lords over everybody else and everything else, and that tells the judiciary when to take a case or how to rule on a case or what, as the current prime minister is trying to do with this Budna issue. He's trying to act as executive. He's trying to act as judiciary. He's trying to act in all the capacities, all to exculpate himself and or those who are trying to do favors for him, and made a mess of what we now have as the Budna affair, which they are constantly muddying the water and trying to make sure that there's no links back to where the original instigation of this issue goes back to, or should go back to. What is being done now is to have everybody focus on various reports. The first one that was given to the Prime Minister, that he objected to and said that it wasn't good enough, so he fired the commissioner. Had that matter went directly to the DPP, and the DPP would have told him, okay, well, you haven't done enough investigation, should have had the authority to ask the police to go back and do more investigation. The Prime Minister went ahead, put the commissioner on leave. Well, I don't know if I should say it like that, but for all intents and purposes, initially he said he had put the man on leave because the man gave him a bogus report. Afterwards, he came back and said, well, he didn't put the man on leave. The man asked to go on leave. How the man asked to go on leave when there was such a massive and major, critical, crisis-driven police matter that needed to be dealt with? The Prime Minister lied on himself, as we always say. They tell one lie, then they go back and tell another lie to quote the first lie and forget that they told the first lie. And then they keep telling additional lies to try and get out of the lies that keep piling up. And all they do is embarrass themselves and make a fool and a mockery of the whole process. Why? Because they don't want to have no culpability directed at them for whatever part they may have played in the whole of this process. I'm straying away a little bit. I'm getting... I'd like to read paragraph C, which reads as follows. reviewing proposals, treaties, regional and international membership to foreign bodies, and report its findings to the Senate. Now, the Senate is the one that has the jurisdiction and the authority currently for these matters. But now the Prime Minister, well, I shouldn't say he is proposing, I should say the PCC Commission is proposing to the Prime Minister that he takes those powers away, amend the Constitution so that those powers then fall under the jurisdiction of this constitutional review, of this constitutional group, the 5-member group that the Prime Minister is going to appoint. It's backwards, and when they do these things, they're doing it with a specific intent in mind. Every bits and piece of this issue that they put together is leading to an objective that they have in mind. I'll read D, which says as follows: adjudicate the proceedings of referenda. That's totally out of the order. That's the purview of the Supreme Court. How you going to just pick 5 people? Of course, maybe you could pick lawyers, or you could pick judges or retired judges, or, but the bottom line is how you want to take away the powers of the Constitution vested in the third branch of government, which is an independent judiciary. A judiciary that has its own unlimited powers to review all legal matters in the country, to review as well as to decide whether or not something is constitutional. You're going to take that power away from the Supreme Court. That was the reason why they went ahead initially under the false premise that they wanted to get away from the British Privy Court, so that we local Belizeans could have a Caribbean court of justice that would look at things more favorably according to how we, the Caribbean people, who seem to, want to live our lives or run our country, and don't have to be binded by the ancient British court. We will do something modern, which is to say, act in dictatorial manner. Whatever our leaders say, that's the law of the day. And then the law would be changing every time we change leaders. In fact, it probably would change even before we change leaders. With the same leaders, whatever they come up with on any given day, when they wake up, it's like a king, modern, like ancient king. Anytime they wake up on one day, whatever they decide to make a ruling or a decision on, that is the law of the day. Bunch of scoundrels. Section E reads as follows: supervising the administration and ensuring the proper functioning of all commissions, agencies, statutory bodies, and all government related. I need to go to the next page. All government related bodies requiring of them, whenever is necessary, to comply with the Constitution. So this body here is not an elected body, but it's put in place by elected officials to lord over the Constitution, to assume powers separate and distinct from that of the judiciary. In other words, capture some of the powers of the judiciary, capture some of the powers of the legislative, because they're going to decide what goes to the legislator for lawmaking purposes. They will review it first. They will validate whether or not it's constitutional or unconstitutional. That's the purview of the court. But the Prime Minister would like to put some of his bodies there in this particular commission and let them run roughshod over the judiciary. Because for all intents and purposes, as I said earlier, they will be neutering the judiciary by taking away these powers. I would like to go to the part of the Constitution. Well, before I do that, I'm going to transition. I was going to transition, but before I do that transition, I need to back up what I just mentioned. That I read what they have in their report, and I'm going to read now what the Constitution says. And why is it that they're so hot to try and get rid of the Constitution? Because they're scofflaws. They don't want to abide by the rules, the regulations, the laws, or the Constitution itself. Let's see. I need to turn this upside down just for a second. Oh, we're at 41 minutes, so we have good time. I'm doing good. Okay. So I'll read from the Constitution of Belize, Part 4, so you can get a flavor of what is it that the Constitution says compared to what is it that they're trying to bamboozle the people with. On Part 4 of the Constitution, the heading is the Governor General. Same kind of heading that they put on that recommendation. Just that if you listen carefully as I read, I might be babbling, a little bit. But if you listen carefully, those of you who don't have a constitution, I'll continue the practice of reading from it, from the electronic version that I have, to facilitate people hearing what the Constitution says when it speaks to these matters. Under Section 30 of the Constitution, it says, there shall be a Governor General of Belize, who shall be a citizen of Belize. Now remember, when I read the recommendation just now, it says, abolish the office of the Governor General. They're not satisfied that they appoint their Governor General who they want, and that Governor General works along with the government to facilitate the best interests of the country. No. Even if they had that kind of mindset in terms of wanting to facilitate the best interests of the country, they don't want to have it being done through a Governor General. They want to have it done out of their pocket, when they feel like, how they feel like, and to hell with anything else. So they just want the opportunity to be able to determine on their own how to go about exercising the functions of the Governor General. So, as I said, they recommend to abolish the office of the Governor General. But that's not what our current Constitution says. And therefore, you can only have one Constitution at a time. The one that we are currently under, and the one that they're trying to govern the country under, based on what they would hope to be able to put in place. So before they succeed at putting the new proposed constitution in place, they are already operating as if that is in place, and this one is silent because they don't operate based on this. The country only have one constitution at a time. Why can't they wait until they finish their exercise and get that craziness that they're trying to bamboozle us with? Hopefully that they succeed according to them, and then they operate on that basis. But for right now, they should be operating on this basis, the present constitution that we have. And they refuse to do so. Morning, noon, and night. And because they won't hold themselves accountable, and the public doesn't have any money to challenge them and hold them accountable or take them to court on these matters, they break these laws, they make these new bastardized so-called amendments, and they put them on the book, and because they're not challenged, at some future date, they turn around and use them as if they were legally constituted as, a proper change to the Constitution and a constitutional, a part of our Constitution itself. I need to read a little bit more here. So it says that there shall be a Governor General of Belize, who shall be a citizen of Belize, appointed by His Majesty, and shall hold office during His Majesty's pleasure. That is to say, the Governor General is a representative of the head of state. Somehow the Prime Minister thinks that because he nominated the person to become or to be assented to as Governor General by the head of state, that then he has control over that Governor General, and that Governor General has some authority to help the Prime Minister commit the sedition, to eviscerate the Governor General's position, as well as the head of state position and the head of state. That's what sedition is all about. If you open the dictionary and you read the meaning of the word sedition, that's what it will tell you it is. When you have nefarious entities in a country trying to vanquish the head of state and take over the powers of the head of state, those are what revolutions are all about. But these guys don't want to be on the front doing the battle. Like I said, they want to hide behind the fractal of the general public, while disabusing the general public of the appropriate knowledge and information that they need in order for them to know or substantiate these guys' nefarious behavior. They don't want the people to know that they're trying to get them to do something wrong. So they won't lie to them, they won't try to trick them. And so there are a lot of people in Belize who know what is going on or what these guys are after. But they don't care. All they are worried about is what's going to fall off the table for them. Lack of patriotism. And it's happening all over the world. I continue on, and it says, the Governor General shall hold office during His Majesty's pleasure, and who shall be His Majesty's representative in Belize. Section 31 of the Constitution of Belize, subsection 1, reads as follows. During any period when the office of Governor General is vacant, or the holder of the office of Governor General is absent from Belize, or is, for any other reasons, unable to perform the functions of his office, those functions shall be performed by such person as His Majesty may appoint. That is to say, a Deputy Governor General. Paragraph subsection 2 reads as follows. Any such person as aforesaid, being the Deputy Governor General, shall not continue to perform the functions of the office of Governor General if the holder or the original holder of the office as Governor General, or some other person having a prior right to performing the functions of that office, has notified him or her, the particular Deputy Governor General, that he, as the originally assigned person, being the Governor General in this instance, that he is about to assume or resume those functions. In other words, when the Governor General is going to be indisposed, the Governor General can make a writ authorizing the Deputy Governor General to act on behalf of the Governor General in the Governor General's absence. And when the Governor General is ready to come back and assume that position, he can notify that deputy that he, the Governor General, is taking over back his powers and that deputy has to yield. Subsection 3 reads as follows: the holder of the office of Governor General shall not, for the purposes of this section, be regarded as being absent from Belize or as unable to perform the functions of his or her office, as in paragraph A, either by reason that he is in passage from one part of Belize to another. That is to say, he's traveling on the road, going from Belmopan to Stanquet, or from Belmopan to Belize, or from Belmopan to Corozal, or from Belmopan to Cayo, or from Belmopan to PG. Wherever he or she, as Governor General, is traveling, that short distance travel would not be constituted as the Governor General not being in a position to do his or her job, because the period of time for traveling to any such distance is minimal. At the longest or at the most would be 5 hours. So then there's no need to replace the Governor General or have the Deputy Governor General come in and sign anything on behalf of the Governor General, like what had happened in the past, where the Deputy Governor General signed some documents on behalf of the Governor General on behalf of Cabinet. When that same Deputy Governor General was a member of Cabinet by being the Secretary to the Cabinet. Those two positions are anathema to each other. You cannot have a Governor General or an assistant or a Deputy Governor General who are sent to the powers and authority vested in the Prime Minister and the members of Cabinet to have the same person sit under Cabinet as a Cabinet Secretary. And they're all aware of that fact. Because as Deputy Governor General, that person is sitting over the whole governance of the country. And as Cabinet Secretary, he's subordinate to the Prime Minister and Cabinet. Bunch of jokers. Paragraph B, which is the last paragraph in that particular section, it says, at any time when there is a subsisting appointment of a deputy under Section 33 of this Constitution. So, for all intents and purposes, even the Constitution speaks this matter and is speaking clearly and pointing out precepts, principles, guidelines, process, procedures, and protocols on how these matters are supposed to be dealt with. Yet we have these jokers acting like clowns and pretending that they don't know what they're supposed to be doing, or that when they're doing something that is wrong and somebody points it out to them, that they have to claim that, well, they are being aggrieved because somebody is pointing out something to them that they disagree with and or were ignorant of. It's not because they were ignorant of nothing. It's deliberate scofflaw conduct. That's what it's all about at the end of the day. I go on to read Section 32 of the Constitution of Belize, which falls under the same Part 4 of the Constitution, because remember, when I read what they were proposing, they want to eviscerate the whole thing. So for all intents and purposes, all of what I'm reading right now out of the Constitution is what they were intending. They just give a blanket statement and said, eviscerate the whole of Part 4 of the Constitution of Belize. And people who have never read the Constitution or know nothing about the Constitution, if these issues were to be eviscerated totally, they would never know that their Constitution was made less functional, less effective, and was turned into a comic book. Let me read this stuff. Section 32 of the Constitution of Belize reads as follows: a person appointed to hold the office of Governor General shall, before entering upon the duties of that office as the Governor General or Deputy Governor General, they shall take and subscribe the office of allegiance and office, the oath of allegiance and office. Now, I think I made reference to this particular section 32 many times in the past when I said or stipulate that these current leaders that we have put in place to manage our governance system on our behalf, they act like the only time that they have any fidelity or swearing or any concern about the Constitution is when they go to the Governor General to be assented the powers of governance. And after that, they have no allegiance, they forget the oath, they have no fidelity to it. They don't even have any fidelity to the people who elect them into office. Because they make all these bastardized constitutional changes and they make all these policies of state that doesn't comply with the constitutional requirements. And they run the country, as if it's their one personal fiefdom, Nothing that they do has to do or turn out to be beneficial to the country, other than going to the House of Representatives ever so often to ask for more money. And they cannot give an account of what the money is doing, where the money is, what it was spent on. There's no audit. Okay? They don't provide the information that the Auditor General can do their job or any of the other auditors. And when they leave office, they go into office, if they become elected as an area representative and they get the majority, they become ministers and they become millionaire in the first term. And if they serve 2 terms, they become multi-millionaire. And if they serve 3 terms, they become multi-millionaire. Why? It's all about the hustle. It's not about governance or management. Every so often you hear about this contract, that contract, almost everything they put their finger on end up with a problem. If anybody thinks I'm just talking off the top of my head or out of my back pocket, all I have to do is check the daily news report. Okay? What's happening currently with the Balkan Bridge and the new bridge that's supposed to replace it? Everybody knows that. What happened to the contracts when Mr. Martinez issued? What happened to the contracts at the airport for the services for security system? What happened with the contract for buying the piece of land by the toilet pan that they sold to this gentleman for less than $600,000, and within a few years' time they bought it for almost $7 million from him to go and build a hospital next door to a sewage pan when they had good quality land on the university compound itself where that hospital was proposed to be built. But somebody needed to have some cash money for electioneering purposes and decided, to swing a deal. And if you want the details, I could give them to because I know where they are. That's why I talk about it. Because I know they can't run up on me and they try to ask me no stupid question because I got all the answers for them. Anytime I open my mouth and speak to an issue, it's because I know where the evidence is and what the evidence is all about. I have a very excellent track record in that regards over many decades. So I'm not talking just things that just come out of my mouth or just fall out of my head overnight. Let me proceed. I'm belaboring a little bit here. Under Section 33 of the Constitution, it says, 33 subsection 1, whenever the Governor General, as in the case of paragraph A, has occasion to absent him or herself from the seat of government, but not from Belize, as in the case of paragraph B as well, has occasion to be absent from Belize for a period which he considers or she considers acting in his or her own deliberate judgment will be of a short duration, or as in the last paragraph here, I think, paragraph C under this section, if the Governor General is suffering from an illness which he or she considers acting in his or her own deliberate judgment will be of a short duration, such as maybe, a leaf flu or something like that, right? She or he is not totally infirm, basically. There are some other portions here that falls under the category of the Governor General, and some of them are very strident. I don't know if I should take the opportunity to read them. I think I have enough time. I'll just go ahead and read a few of them, because a lot of people have this bad habit of being ill-informed, uninformed, or misinformed as to the powers vested in the Governor General. Many of them I hear speaking about the authority and power vested in the Governor General as being just that of a figurehead. They're just there to rubber stamp. So for those who don't know their constitution, who doesn't have a constitution, or for those who propagate silly information that doesn't go so like we are saying believes, here it goes. I'll go back to, okay, I finished 33. There was a paragraph in 33 two sections in 33 that I didn't finish read. So I'll just step back to that for a second, please. And it says, he or she acting in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister appoints any person in Belize to be his deputy, as in the case of a deputy Governor General, during such an absence or illness, and in that capacity to perform on his behalf or her behalf, whether it's a male or female Governor General, in this case, currently it's a female, such of the functions of the office of Governor General as may be specified in the instrument by which he or she is appointed. I think I made reference to that earlier when I said that the Governor General, in the absence of the Governor General, when the Governor General is indisposed legitimately, the Deputy Governor General is given the appointment to act in the capacity of the Governor General. But it's not something willy-nilly that the Deputy Governor General could just arbitrarily and capriciously decide to act without being given an appointment or without being given an instrument, which is how they describe it legally, right? The instrument is a document that the Governor General signs authorizing the Deputy Governor General to act in the capacity of, on behalf of the Governor General in certain limited issues. That power is not plenipotentiate power that is given by the head of state to the Governor General. It's not all the powers, the plenipotential powers of the Governor General that gets invested or vested in the Deputy Governor General. In other words, the Deputy Governor General cannot one day go and sign on behalf of Cabinet any documents that says that they want to get rid of the Governor General and the Governor General boss as head of state. because the Deputy Governor General, while acting in some capacities on behalf of the Governor General, does not have that level of power. Even the Governor General proper does not have any authority vested in her to be able to sign away the existence and or the office of her boss as head of state. Those powers are reserved to the head of state. The Governor General is never granted any such authority. So I don't know where our Prime Minister and our ministers them and our PUP government them and even some of the UDP them get the impression that because Belize is an independent country and they don't recognize that it's a conditional independence that the country has, for all intents and purposes, I feel like they could just have and pull the head of state or decide when and how and when they can vanquish the head of state or dismiss the head of state by having the Governor General sign off on any such decree. Any such decree on behalf of the Governor General to sign off on any document that stipulates that, such as the PCC Act that was taken to Congress and passed in Congress and signed off, is anti-constitutional. It's null and void. It's violative of the Constitution. The Governor General does not have the powers, much less the Deputy Governor General, to sign away those positions and those authorities, or to transfer those powers and authorities from the Governor General or the Deputy Governor General or from the head of state to the Prime Minister, for the Prime Minister to, in his own, I wouldn't call it feeble man, but sometimes these guys act like infants, like they have an infantile mentality. They are so devious and so treacherous to the point of trying to bamboozle the people into believing that we Belizeans are sovereign citizens. We can dispatch the head of state whenever we want, or if we just want to do it just for, just to get rid of the head of state and just give those powers and authority and vest those powers and authority in our Prime Minister. That's what these guys are after here. That's what they're stipulating. They say to get rid of the Governor General, get rid of the head of state, and those powers will be exercised by the Prime Minister, who shall then become the head of state. It's in black and white, right here in the same report that I was reading earlier, and in our Constitution, which is current right now. They are presuming that this Constitution that is current is really not current. What they are operating under and by is the one that they're trying to get in place or put in place. They disregard the current Constitution altogether. And as far as they are concerned, so what? Who's going to make them do any different? Bunch of scofflaws. Anyhow, I think I got one other paragraph on the same. That is under section 2 of the same section. I'll just read that quickly and get it over with because, like I said, there are some of these. Oh, shucks, what did I do? Holy Toledo. I messed up. Please give me another couple of seconds here. I touched the screen and the whole thing went berserk. It went back to the beginning of the first page on the Constitution. And so I got to make it small quickly and then try and go back to the. Oh, man, that's crazy. Please pardon me. Okay. No, let's see. Let's do this. Enlarge this part here. See how far down I am. Oh, man. No, I exaggerated. No, I went to 113. All I was trying to reach was just back to 34. That's where I was supposed to be. I won't take long. Hopefully I'll get there right now. I'm at 59. Okay. 34, not too far away now, I think. Yeah, I'm at 39. Okay, let me slow down. I want to fly past it. Okay, I'm at 36, 35. I want to go to 34. Okay, I'm at 34 now. Yeah. Okay, so I'll skip. No. Let me read it. I don't want to skip it because I promised earlier that I wanted the public to know why is it that the Governor General is not a figurehead as most people are tempted to stipulate, no, or are encouraged to believe. Okay, so section 2 of, I mean, not section 2, subsection 2 of section 33 reads as follows: the powers and authority of the Governor General shall not be abridged, comma, altered, or in any way affected by the appointment of a deputy under this section. That is to say, as I stipulated earlier, the Deputy Governor General has no power that transcends or goes beyond that of which the Governor General proper appoints to him in that writ of appointment. And it's not all plenipotentiate powers that is granted to the Governor General that gets transmitted, and or that the Deputy Governor General cannot sign any documents that vanishes away the position of the Governor General, much less the position of her boss as the head of state. So when these jackals, hyenas, and jokers are telling us that they want to go ahead and vanish part 4 of our Constitution and to abolish the office of the Governor General and as well abolish the office of the head of state, then where the hell are they going to get the powers and authority to be vested in them to run the system or the state? Are they presuming that they will march into town, hang the Governor General, and tell the head of state not to come to Belize because we can hang him too? I mean, our country is too small. We can't even deal with Guatemala right now proper, or anybody else in our region, much less, trying to presume that we'll be able to vanquish the head of state at our own. I mean, there are different ways how those things can be achieved, but let me not give them no ideas. We should open my book and move on. Yeah, I'm still within time frame, so. Okay, so I'll continue reading subsection 2 of section 33 of the Constitution of Belize, and I'll say, under this section, and subject to the provisions of this Constitution, a deputy shall conform to and observe all instructions that the Governor General, acting in his or her own capacity as Governor General, deliberates judgment, may from time to time order him or her to do. In other words, the Governor General proper has the authority over the Deputy Governor General. Okay? I mean, that I shouldn't have had to explain that either because that's basic protocols. Provided that they question whether or not a deputy has conformed to and observed any such instructions given to him by the Governor General, shall not be entered into by any court of law. Remember last week I pointed out that the Governor General is the only person in Belize that has the power and authority to override final decisions of the court in regards to, for example, the pardoning powers, or the commutation powers, to pardon somebody that has been adjudged as guilty by the judiciary branch. Even the Prime Minister doesn't have that authority. Okay? So for all intents and purposes, the authority vested in the Governor General is not just, a rubber stamp. Okay? I'll go a little further and I'll read 3, subsection 3 of part of section 33 of the Constitution of Belize reads as follows. A person appointed as deputy under this section shall hold that appointment for such period as may be specified in the instrument by which he or she is appointed, and his appointment may be revoked at any time by the Governor General proper, acting in accordance with the advice of the Prime Minister. Maybe under that particular statement there, because it requires the advice of the Prime Minister, some people will say, okay, well, once the Prime Minister speaks, he has the power and authority to force the Governor General to react or respond. I beg to differ, and I'll show you why. Not with my words, but the black and white from the Constitution. I go now to section 34 of the same Constitution of Belize, subsection 1, and it reads as follows. In the exercise of his function or her function, the Governor General shall act in accordance with the advice of the Cabinet or a minister acting under the general authority of Cabinet, except in cases where he or she is required by this Constitution or any other law, such as when I use the phrase, or when the Constitution use the phrase other law, it is referring to laws that are made by the legislative bodies, right? Other law, substantive laws, which can be ruled as being anti-constitutional, unconstitutional, or violative of the Constitution, which has happened many times before, that the court has ruled that laws that the legislature have made, the court deemed them to be unconstitutional, which is the prerogative of the court, as I previously stated and as is stated here in the Constitution of Belize itself. Then there is also another part here that says, or in any other law, to act in accordance with the advice of or after consultation with any person or authority other than the Cabinet, or in his or her own deliberate judgment. I hope you understand, those who are listening to our program, what that means. To act in one's or a person's own deliberate judgment, okay, means that that judgment can supersede the judgment of any other person that you consult with. Your judgment is final, and you have the right within your own deliberate judgment to override any recommendation or advice that you receive, whether you sought it or whether it was imposed on you with the intention to have you do what that advice is recommending. As far as the power and authority of the Governor General, the ultimate and last word can be based on not what was inputted to him or her, but what he or she decides, or after consultation with any person or authority other than the Cabinet, or in his or her own deliberate judgment. Subsection 2 of section 34 reads as follows. Any reference in this Constitution to the functions of the Governor General shall be construed as a reference to his or her power and duties in the exercise of the execution or executive authority, which the Governor General is fully vested with, of Belize, and to any other powers and duties conferred or imposed on him or her as Governor General, by or under this Constitution or any other law. I go on to read subsection 3, where it says, whereby this Constitution, the Governor General is required to perform any functions after consultation with any person or authority, he or she, as the Governor General, shall not be obliged to exercise the functions in accordance with the advice of that person or authority. Remember, I mentioned that earlier when I said that the Governor General does not have to restrict his or her final decision to the input that he or she receives, even when it is required that he or she receives or seeks input. The final judgment comes from his or her arbitrary decision making. She's empowered to overrule any input and just go with whatever, his or her uh, personal judgment. And I'll read, I think it's, I'm not sure if this is the last. Yeah, this is the last part of section 34. So I'll just finish it up. Let's see where I'm at, 21. Okay. Subsection 4 of section 34 of the Constitution reads as follows. This is the last one, like I said. I'm just trying to finish reading and get out because time is running. Whereby this Constitution, the Governor General is required to perform any functions in accordance with the advice of or after consultation with any person or authority. The question whether the Governor General has so exercised that function shall not be inquired into by any court of law. So the Governor General sits even above the courts of law, right? Nobody can question, the authority of the so-called figurehead. I laugh because a lot of people like to poke fun and say, well, there must be a figurehead because they never do anything different than what the Prime Minister wants or what that's part of protocol and procedure. They are not there to be adverse and or to, but they're there with the power and authority to demand clarification and information about any matters of governance from the country because they are the head executive. And that executive authority, which is vested in the head of state, may be used, like it is said in the Constitution, by subordinate officers. And who are those subordinate officers? The figurehead, true? I'm just laughing, trying to be funny. I'll try and see if I can fit in. The last part of this part 4 is section 35. And section 35 is one paragraph. So I'll try and fit it in before we go to something else on the show. And then I'll leave the other section about the executive authority of Belize, which is 36, but it has some subsections to it. Let me read section 35 quickly. The Prime Minister shall keep the Governor General fully informed concerning the general conduct of the government of Belize and shall furnish the Governor General with such information as he or she may request with respect to any particular matter relating to the governance and the government of Belize. How is that for being a figurehead? You understand now why is it I was prepping earlier and telling you or listeners to this particular show about hearing people talk about the Governor General as being a figurehead and just being there to be a rubber stamp to whatever the Prime Minister and Cabinet wants? Let me read this part again over, right? And I hope it sticks in somebody's memory. Section 35 of the Constitution of Belize reads as follows, and it is the last section under Part 4 that this recommendation was telling us to vanish or eviscerate or take out totally out of the Constitution. If you take that totally out of the Constitution, we're up the creek with no paddle to help us. The Prime Minister shall keep the Governor General fully informed concerning the general conduct of the government of Belize and shall furnish the Governor General with such information as he or she may request with respect to any particular matter relating to the government of Belize. And that's the end of Part 4 of the Constitution of Belize. I hope my having tried to make a presentation of that information will inspire or encourage some people to go and get their own copy of the Constitution so they can read and verify or validate whether or not what I was saying is so, had any merits. The only difference of the words that I added in context of the Constitution is to say when the Constitution currently that we have speaks to his or her, I'm the one putting in the her because there's no her in there in reference to the fact that our current Governor General is a woman. The Constitution, the last version, or this version that I'm reading from, at the time, considered a man to have been and would be the Governor General. And while we have had a female Governor General, Miss Minita Garden, before, which from way back then, the Constitution should have been updated to and modified to take care of these housekeeping matters in terms of letting the Constitution speak to the fact that we have also had a female Governor General, and now we have a second one. So therefore, it should say he or she. It shouldn't just be addressing he as if it's only relating to. In other words, these are the kind of things that I believe that the Constitution, should be tampered with, but not for the bastardized way in which these jackals try to go in there and wholesale eviscerate and try to come up with something different that only serve their purpose on a temporary basis. Because as far as I could see from these people, they are just there to put Belize through a transition process, to achieve the very Webster proposal, the heads of agreement, the special agreement, and the Ranfal-Waika 2000 proposals, as well as the special agreement that they gave Guatemala to broke over our head, to get us to the ICJ. All these things are bits and pieces of what they're putting in place to hamstring us and to get us to where they want us to be. At the stage of being a defenseless papa, besides being a small, insignificant entity with less than 500,000 people, at least that's by their numbers. By my numbers, we have about 600 plus thousand. But I won't quibble or argue about that. I just want to say, before I close off, right? I just want to read this section that we might go into in our next when we have an opportunity, and that will be Part 5 under the executive, and it says, Section 36 of the Constitution of Belize reads as follows, subsection 1. The executive authority is vested in His or Her Majesty of England. And that is part of the reason why I keep saying to these people, everybody keeps repeating this canard, that Belize is an independent country, without recognizing the fact that we have a conditional independence. We're not fully independent. We're not voting for our head of state. Right? We don't even vote for a prime minister. We vote for the different division leader representatives then. And depending on who or which party gets the majority, that party then decides among themselves who they will have or use as the head of the uh, the what do they call it? The, the head of the parliament. And in our system of governance in Belize, the head of parliament, for all intents and purposes, is the person that they choose to become the prime minister, who then picks his cabinet members and goes to the governor general for ascension of powers to govern the country. Okay? So, for all intents and purposes, that is the person that the governor general then gives permission to take up governance of the country on behalf of the people who voted for them. And the fact that that person then sits in cabinet and have a cabinet secretary work for him, and he turns around and appoints this very same person to become the deputy governor general, who will sign on behalf of the head of state things that the prime minister wants to have signed, but that if the governor general were to have a constitutional office with constitutional minded independent advisors to her as the governor general, then there would be situations where some of these onerous and illegal and unconstitutional things that the governor general is signing off onto, they would be able to stop it, because they would be able to advise the governor general that such and such an issue is unconstitutional, is violative of the constitution, and should not be enacted. But the governor general has to depend on the attorney general, as it stands right now, for her legal advice. And who the attorney general is working for? Not the people of Belize. He's acting as if he is the private lawyer of the prime minister. And as a member of the cabal of cabinet, he works to try and make whatever cabinet decides, to be forced into law, or have the governor general, he go and give cabinet advice to the governor general for the governor general to react to. But nobody calls that and says that is a rubber stamp. Why? Because according to them, that's expected. The governor general should have no authority, not authority, should have no awareness as to when or not she's been walked into committing sedition herself. Because that is the case of this same document that we're talking about here currently. That is that this document was assented to. The PCC Act was passed in Congress and assented to under the seal of the Governor General. And the Governor General have no power unto herself to assent to the dispatching of her office and the office of her boss. I will read it again. The executive, section 36 of the Constitution of Belize says, the executive authority of Belize is vested in whom? The Prime Minister? No. Don't get that idea in your head. Because it says the executive authority of Belize is vested in His Majesty and or Her Majesty. Okay? Not in the Prime Minister. But those executive powers can be granted to the Governor General for other subordinate officers, not officers who are above the Governor General's position, but officers who are below her position, subordinate officers. And I'll read it to you as it says. Subsection 2 of Section 36 of the Constitution says, subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the executive authority of Belize may be exercised maybe, not shall be, may be exercised on behalf of His Majesty or Her Majesty by the Governor General, either directly, as when she is using that power or authority to transmit governance authority to her subordinate officers, either directly or through officers subordinate to him or her. I stop at that because next time we take up the rest of we'll keep attempting to go through, and we'll do as much as we can on any given night. Tonight is one of those nights that my other colleagues were not available, and so I had full time to spend and went as far as I could. I've gone 5 minutes over the time of the show, so I need to shut it down now. And I need to say thanks to you, the Belizeans at home and abroad, and others who grace us with your time, valuable time at that, to listen to what we have to offer. I hope that what we offered tonight may accrue some positive public benefit to those of you who had the opportunity to hear it. You're free to share. I didn't, and I messed up tonight because normally when the show is going on, I'm in the background connecting up all the other various pieces of our platform. And tonight, I just ran on with the show and I didn't connect to some people. So as soon as the show is finished, I'm going to try and afford them the opportunity to hear what went on while they couldn't connect. But thank you very much again for those who gave us your attention for an hour and a half. And I hope that you may have derived some positive public benefit from listening to the program tonight. And I hope that I would have encouraged you to try and fact check what I was saying by at least getting a copy of the Constitution for yourself. It may serve you many other purposes other than just to follow with what we are doing here on this particular platform. Thanks very much again. God bless Belizeans at home and abroad. God bless Belize. Thank you very much. Good night and goodbye.